Hello and welcome to Analog Insights. In today's episode, Jules and I take a closer look at the LomoChrome Color 92 Sun-Kissed, which Lomography recently introduced. I tested the original version of this film, the LomoChrome Color 92, with my buddy Marc Rebillet in New York prior to its official launch in 2023. And in comparison to this film, the Sun-Kissed edition, which we have here, is apparently showing more of an orange tint to it and less bluish and greenish tints. And in combination with the stronger grain structure, they claim that the film creates a very nice classic vintage 1990s look. Furthermore, the company argues that it represents skin tones very accurately and nicely and is therefore well suited for shooting portraits. And the company also claims to produce the film and the emulsion themselves. And of course, I have no possibility to confirm this. They just mention a handcrafted process and that the film is a limited edition, and it's also mentioned here on the packaging. And yet this could also just mean that somewhere they have a master roll and they just convert it into and spool it into individual rolls and package it and so on. This could also mean the handcrafted process. We have no insight on that, whether the Lomography is really producing this emulsion themselves or not. That said, we're always excited about any new film hitting the market, and of course we're super curious to give this a try. I have two test rolls here, one for the 120 format and one for the 35mm format. And the big question was which cameras to use to shoot these and expose these two rolls. And we eventually settled on the Hasselblad SWC and the Olympus 35RD. And for the 35RD, we combined it with a very nice Oberwert Mosel strap in green, a brand new one that looks really nice on such a chrome colored camera, in my opinion. And in the case of the Hasselblad, it's important to note that Jules is not using the viewfinder that it comes with, but instead guesses what will be in the frame based on his experience with the camera, and is using the balance lever. So whenever you see him, the balance level, whenever you see him looking down, he's basically making sure that the composition would be as straight as possible. So let's take a closer look at the film and our findings. So what about our personal impressions and our assessment? Based on the interviews that I had read prior to using the film on the Lomography website, I saw a couple of photographers mentioning towards the end that they would recommend shooting the film with one more stop of light, so basically adding one stop and overexposing it slightly. And this is in line with our own experience and what often we do for color negative film. And you might already know this, but color negative film if underexposed, tends to create bluish or even greenish tones in the shadows, so in the darker areas of your frame. And the best way to compensate for that is to add a little bit more light to make sure that you get a nice exposure across the entire frame, especially if you don't have time to meter the scene completely manually but have to rely on a built-in meter. Then it's highly recommended to give it a little bit more light to ensure that you get correct exposure across the frame. And in this case, we did the same. So instead of shooting it at box speed, so the ISO 400, we rated it at ISO 200 and effectively overexposed it by 1 stop. Another important aspect when looking at a new film is, of course, in such a hybrid way here, the scanning process. So instead of only relying on one lab and the official scans, so to speak, we also wanted to double check on those and see how would it perform with a different scanner, or even when taking digital photographs and then converting it. And our setup here was that we sent out the films to my trusted film speed lab in Berlin, and they scanned it with a Noritsu scanner in a wonderful way. And then we also wanted to compare the Noritsu results to a Fuji Frontier SP500, and Jules happens to have one, so we used this one for another set of scans, only for one of the of the slices that we got out of it, so of the strips, so not an entire roll, but some of the frames we rescanned. And then last but not least, we also thought, okay, how would it look like when photographed with the digital camera, the negative, and then converted using the Filmomat Smart Convert, which was recently released, that has the advantage that you can really create very neutral scans. And looking at these three side by side, you can clearly see how small the differences actually turned out to be. Only small nuances in terms of contrast and a little bit the tones and so on, but really, really details. I was really surprised to see this kind of consistency. And what surprised me most was that the results were relatively cold and less warm and orange than I would have expected them, based on the name of the film and the marketing material and so on. And of course that might be related to the kind of light that we had on that particular Sunday morning. It was rather overcast at first, but then later on the sun came out and we had some really nice direct sunlight scenes that we have also captured, and even in those kinds of scenes it didn't feel particularly sun-kissed. So I can certainly imagine that the film creates a different, or has a different character when shot at direct sunlight on the beach with a bright blue sky and so on, that then it really brings out these yellowish tones. But in our tests in the gray German environment that we looked at, we didn't really get this out of it, at least here in our test. The film does create really, really nice skin tones and contrasts, and I can see myself using it for a portrait session. I'm not sure whether this would be the exclusive film for such a portrait session, or whether I would combine it rather with a Kodak Portra or something that is a bit more predictable, or where I have more experience, I would say. But if this is really the look that I'm aiming for, I can certainly imagine myself using it for a portrait session. But then I would be curious to see how would it perform maybe with a smaller compact camera with a built-in flash or something like that, or a more common setup and so on, and combine it a little bit and see how the different characteristics of the film could be brought out. So for me, this would be still experimentation stage, but definitely interesting. In terms of handling, what we noticed is that for the 120 film, the arrow mark on the backing paper comes relatively early, which made it a little bit difficult to put it in the Hasselblad magazine, and I can imagine certain other medium format cameras where it might be a little bit tricky. It might be a production arrow on this particular one that we had here, or it just might be how they put the backing paper on this film. At least this was noticeable to us that it came really, really early, and we had to rewind it first and then reset it in there, and it took 1 or 2 efforts to really get it in there correctly. But in terms of handling, what also stands out is the beautiful packaging and the kind of attention to detail and the love that Lomography apparently put into the creation of the packaging and the film and everything. So overall, it's a film that is a lot of fun to use, and when rated at ISO 200 really gives you nice, consistent results and beautiful skin tones. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Analog Insights and our review of the LomoChrome Color 92 Sunkissed, which is certainly a very nice film that comes with a special 1990s look to it, and yet the grain was not as pronounced as we would have expected it based on the marketing material, and also the colors were a little bit colder. Certainly very nice look and a lot of potential, and I think it's an invitation to play with the film, as always with Lomography, to just go out there and have fun and explore what you can get out of the film. And as mentioned before, I'm always excited about any new film roll hitting the market, and yet it's not as sun-kissed as I would have expected it. But maybe this is also the problem. I wasn't in at a beautiful beach and a really sunny area, but just good old Munich on a Sunday morning that was a little bit overcast. If you like this video, maybe don't forget to like it and maybe share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to our channel. Jules, Greg, and I really appreciate each and every subscriber coming our way. So thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.